All right, we've been having some technical difficulties, so we're going to try this again. So I don't do a lot of these. So, post this on Twitter. Link to live. Okay. Technical difficulties. All right. So, Manchester City fans love to use net spend, and that's what got this whole thing started. And it's a viable stat, but it's also an excuse maker for Manchester City fans. What really stirred the pot this morning was that in this graphic, and what my initial comment was, it shocked me, absolutely shocked me that Brighton was 70 million, I don't know if I remember if it was in pounds or euros, but 70 million below anybody else. And of course, the bottom ones are like Luton Town and clubs that haven't even been in the Premier League very long, but they're so far below everybody else. And it was shocking to me. Obviously, I know they're not a big spending club, and I know they are a incredibly well-run business. And if I got accused of being lazy, in not doing my research, and I'll throw it back on Brighton fans for not doing their research on who I am and what I talk about. And I've posted a couple videos defending Brighton, particularly when there was a lot of push for them to sell Caicedo this winter, and I said, why would you do that this winter? You're in the middle of a great season. He's one of your best players. You need him. And even now, if they can get $100 million for him, great. But if they don't get what they want, they shouldn't. Right? And I hate when the smaller clubs, or the not massive spending clubs, I always feel bad calling Brighton a smaller club, but you know what I mean by that. Not the big six ones, not with the oil money, not with the, and they shouldn't be bullied into selling anybody before they are ready and when they have decided it's the right business decision. So, I would love to see them hold on to Caicedo. I think that the tide has turned, and he's being somewhat selfish for wanting to leave for a club like Chelsea. The argument for leaving for a bigger club was always, you're going to get European football, and well, wait a second, Chelsea doesn't have that this year, Brighton does, right? So your argument sort of falls apart. So I'm a big advocate of Brighton and holding on to their players as long as they can and getting the most that they can, because that is a vital part of their business model and how they survive, and they shouldn't sell before they're absolutely ready. And their business model is as good as you'll find in European football, certainly in the Premier League, and definitely it's head and shoulders above any other club that doesn't have massive amounts of money. My argument was that, and I guess some of it was just the sticker shock of seeing this number, and it was that their net spend was, I think, negative 65 million since 2020, which means they've made 65 million on transfers. Now, here's part of the problem, and this is where the attacks that I got, the comments I got from Brighton fans were legitimate, and I had not done my research this morning because this is what I get for tweeting at a traffic light. So, full disclosure, when I made my initial comments, I had not done the research, but I have since this morning. I made some comments about owners pocketing money and lining their pockets with these lucrative transfer fees that are not being reinvested in the club. And Tony Bloom has reinvested in the club, maybe not in massive transfers, but the infrastructure, the academy, the facilities, and this is all incredible stuff that not enough owners are doing. So credit where it's due, not to mention the fact that he kept things afloat during COVID, and COVID was a massive wrench into things for a lot of clubs. Leicester was not able to survive COVID, essentially, because their ownership money comes so much from the tourism industry, which went completely non-existent for a few years. So, credit where it's due to ownership for reinvesting. However, at some point, that money must be reinvested in the now, right? And what I hate seeing, and this is more than just in European football, this is sports in general. I'm a big proponent of analytics. I'm huge in analytics. My background was from baseball, where the analytics movement took place about 25, 30 years ago, and I was a big advocate for it despite the resistance. And European football is playing catch-up in that regard a little bit, but it's coming, and it's there, and clubs like Brighton are at the forefront of it, and they do a fantastic job of it. However, you can get caught up in the analytics of getting a little overexcited about the efficiency, right? Well, I'd rather have this player at 20 million than this player at 80 million because he's only a little bit better at 80 million. Well, at some point you need the little bit better player, right? So efficiency is great, but efficiency dies down as you go up the financial ladder, and at some point you've got to spend the money on the now. So reinvesting in infrastructure and more young players is great, but there's more money out there. And I saw in the financial reports from 21-22, the club profited, I think it was £24 million or something like that. Well, even if you just want to take that right on face value, that's a nice player that could have been purchased for the club. So you could have been better right then and there, but that was before the Cucurella and the Alexis McAllister transfers that have taken place, and that's another, I don't know, 130 million or something in transfer fees. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's a lot of money that has come in, and the facilities have been upgraded, and the academy has been funded, and the infrastructure's there. It's time to now spend, and what I don't want to see is this wonderfully well-run club with a clearly passionate fan base, and Brighton fans, I'm with you. I'm with you. And Brighton was everybody's second team this year, and mine included, particularly once Leeds decided to hate all the American players and fire their coach. So they were a lot of fun to watch, and I enjoy them, and I enjoy them for their business model more so than because Moises Caicedo is an amazing player. Although Roberto De Zerbi's a fun coach to watch, and you got a good one there. Pay him if you have to. Take this money and pay him even more every time another club comes after him. But I don't want to see the fans allow ownership to rest on their laurels because for the sake of efficiency. At some point, you got to go out and spend the money to get the next level of players. And what Brighton has done has been amazing at getting them where they are now, right? And they've done it on the shoestring budget, and they are the model that everybody else is now going to try and follow. But it's tough to keep that up. It's tough to continually replenish the young players in the academy, and you developed McAllister, and you developed Caicedo, and you developed Cucurella. You bought him for like 18 and sold him for 60 or something insanely good like that. But at some point, you're gonna invest in those young guys, and they're not gonna develop, and that well's gonna dry up. That's what happened to Leicester. That the well dried up, and then they extended the wrong guys. They were a disaster in how they were run. But at some point, you're gonna have to go out and get some other top tier talent. And I'm not saying go out and get Josko Vardiol or Dusan Vlahovic or go make a run at Osimhen for 100 million. That's not what I'm saying. That's playing FIFA. That's playing Football Manager, right? That's not realistic. But I think on Twitter I listed guys like Kudus or Tyler Adams is available for 25 million. Only if you end up selling Caicedo, but he's obviously not as good. But if they get 100 million for Caicedo, they can get Michael Olise and Tyler Adams and 3 or 4 guys at that same price. And you're going to need depth. The argument I was getting on Twitter today was, is Emerick Laporte really any better than the guys we have? Well, for one, yes, probably. But you're right, it's incremental. So would you spend 40 million to get incrementally better? Probably not. That's not good business. But you guys need depth this year, right? You're competing on 4 fronts now with the Europa League. And there's money to be had by advancing in the Europa League. But you can't do it at the expense of the Premier League because you need to continue to fight for those top 6 finishes. And you already lost your best playmaker. Now you might end up losing your best defensive midfielder. It's going to be tough for them to regroup and to stay in that top 6. One thing I've noticed in the Premier League this summer is almost everybody has gotten better. Almost nobody has gotten worse. It's because the Premier League as a whole is stealing so much of the talent from the rest of Europe because the league is just so much better than anybody else, right? The league as a whole has so much more money than any of the other leagues, so there's just this massive influx of talent into the Premier League. So almost every club has gotten better, with the exception maybe of Spurs, although they got a good coach finally, but they're probably going to lose Harry Kane, so they haven't gotten better. But almost every one of the other big clubs has gotten better. Chelsea's regrouping. They're coming for you. That top 6 finish is going to be really tough to replicate without properly replacing Alexis McAllister and what I'm assuming is an inevitable departure by Moises Caicedo, although, again, I'm rooting against it. But you can't do that constantly by just replenishing 20-year-olds that you hope are going to develop. At some point, you're going to be wrong about somebody. At some point, that well is going to dry up. And I would hate to see, and what I was the vibe I was getting from Brighton fans was that, we'd rather just be okay with this and be the club that is the poster boy of efficient spending and a good business model. We'd rather do that than try to spend a little more and take that next step. It's like you're trying so hard not to be Manchester City that you're willing to just be average instead. And that's, I don't want to see that happen. The business model's great at achieving what has been achieved and getting you into that top six. Now what? Right? Now what? Now you got to spend a little. And again, I'm not saying extravagantly. I'm not saying oil money. I'm not saying go after $100 million contracts. But you got to take that Alexis McAllister money and that Cucurella money and spend a little bit more. And they have spent a little bit. But you're I look at it this way, and I tweeted this out. This is where I'm having trouble, justifying this in my mind. That if I was a Brighton supporter, I would be more angry about this. Your net spend over the past 4 or 5 years is $70 million less than anybody else in the league, and yet you are trying to credit your ownership because they've spent recently on your highest ever transfer, which in and of itself is a justification, except that transfer is only $30 million. So it's not, it's just, that's tough to justify. I see the comment about Leicester. It's not apples to apples. You're right. But you are at risk of running down some of the same paths if you continually rely on the development of young talent to then sell off and then fund the development of more young talent. That's the analogy I'm making, because that was the Leicester model for a number of years. They did not extend any of their guys from when they won the league in 2016, right? And the hope was to then reinvest and develop more and then sell them off and reinvest and develop more. And that works until it stops working, right? And so I'm not saying you're at the risk of being relegated or anything close to that. But that's the analogy I'm sort of making because, it's got the chance to go wrong if you don't continue to get it right. Sorry, I'm trying to adjust this. I've never done this sort of stuff before with the comments. It's got the chance to go wrong if you don't continue to hit on every one of those developing players. And yes, you run the risk of getting large investments in players wrong as well, but they're going to be more of a sure thing. Aymeric Laporte came up today because somebody was tweeting out, why aren't all the other big clubs going after him for $40 million? And it's a good question because he's really good. And if he was more willing to play in a rotation, he would be staying in Manchester City. City doesn't really want to get rid of him. He just doesn't want to. He wants to play full time. So a club like Brighton could offer him full-time playing to anchor their defense, and he's a fantastic player. And $40 million is money that they have. That's my argument, is money that they have. Mohamed Kudus from Ajax is probably in that same range, $35-40 million. He could be the next big dynamic attacker on that team and replace McAllister. He's not the same type of player exactly, but to fill in some of that impact and some of that offensive prowess that is now gone. So that's what I'm talking about is yes, you got to reinvest. You're always going to be a club that invests in young players and develops and gets them in the door cheap and then develops them and then sells them off. But I'm getting the system wrong. Brighton don't need to sell players at huge profits. How so? That's everything that they do. What am I not understanding? Okay, because and I'm genuinely asking. I'm not challenging you. I want to know because some of the pushback I got from fans was, you don't understand the background of this club, and we've come from so far, and hey, that's great. That's great. But is that the ceiling you want to be happy with? I guess is my point. Is why not go for more, right? If the money's there, you can't spend ridiculous, so you don't want to overspend and then put yourself in a hole financially. but the money's there. The money's there, and there's more money available. And that's where the net spend does tell a story. I'm sorry, it does. When your net spend is 70 million, I think, pounds lower than the next highest club, or next lowest club, you're not doing what you need to compete. I'm sorry, you just can't possibly be. All the reinvestment of the world doesn't make up for that. And I don't want to see that happen. I'm rooting for Brighton. This is not an attack on them. The initial comment I made came off as a little bit of an attack, but that's not the goal here. The goal here is not to attack Brighton fans. It's to get you to want to push your owner to make more of an investment. You've got a good owner who is investing in the club, but don't rest on your laurels of just being the well-run model of efficiency that is happy getting to a Europa League spot and as the best you can ever do. I just don't think that's necessary as a ceiling to rest on. I love the business model. I got asked in the comments, am I knocking Brighton for buying cheap and then selling? No. In fact, I'm applauding. So I don't quite understand these comments that say that Brighton doesn't need to sell players at huge profits. I think you do if you want to continue to adjust to compete. Brighton have a wages and economics policy that makes them one of the most sustainable clubs in the country, specifically by not doing what you're advising. That's old school. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. Brighton are different. The whole Brighton are different thing, right? That's the what I keep getting. Oh, you don't get it. Brighton does it differently. That's good. That's good because a lot of clubs are really poorly run. I'm telling you, that is everything that makes Brighton good at what they do and is how they got to this point. And if you are happy never being better than about 5th or 6th place and being happy playing in the Europa League, every couple years, okay, great, so be it. Keep the business model going and never spend. But if you want to advance beyond that, you are going to have to adjust the wage structure. I'm familiar with the argument. I resent the you don't know what you're talking about argument because I have researched this before today. I understand the wage structure. I'm telling you, they're going to have to raise the entire wage structure. That's part of why players like Caicedo or McAllister want to leave. It's not just part of it was always we want to go play at bigger clubs in European football and blah blah blah. But, I want a chance to win. But I think Brighton can give them a chance to win. They're providing them European football, so it comes down to the wage structure, right? And they're going to have to adjust that. Now, again, I'm not talking paying $500 million a week to Erling Haaland, right? That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, that's fine, MH. You can think I'm wrong. I think that Brighton fans are so happy to try and be the best of the underdogs that they're getting in their own way from trying to be even better than that. That's my argument. You guys are the best run club in terms of efficiency and wins per dollar, right? And points per dollar. You're winning the analytics battle. Fantastic, right? And it's how you got to where you are, and kudos to you. It's great. It's fun to watch from a business side. I'm a big fan of the business of sports. And it's great. You are the model. Congratulations. Now what? Right? What's next? What's next? How are you going to get to the next step? Right? How are you going to displace Tottenham as a Big Six club? Right? Because Newcastle already did it, and they did it the easy way, right? By being bought. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you got a chance to do it the right way, which would be even cooler. Right? Playing a Champions League. Right, you're only a few points away from being able to play Champions League football, and you're sitting here arguing with me that it's not the Brighton way. Well, congratulations then, right? Enjoy your one Europa League, appearance every 4 years because you don't want to reinvest. This is the snark that comes out when you just don't want to open your mind, right? So, I love the model. I love. And the wage structure is good. Having a wage structure is good. You don't want to break the bank for any one player. Again, I can't reiterate this enough. I'm not saying go get, Josko Vardiol for $80 million, right? Or Declan Rice for $100. That's not the argument here. Although you've already got your own Declan Rice and you're trying to sell him for $100. but reinvest some. You're going to need 2 or 3 more, not superstars, but impact players, right? You have replaced McAllister. You're right. You have replaced him, but not well, not equally, right? And you were going to need a player like McAllister to compete on just in getting back to 6th place, let alone in the Europa League, right? And so you've already taken a step back there. You're probably going to take a step back in Caicedo, and now what, right? So are we just happy to be here? I hate the happy to be here approach, particularly when there's money, right? If you were broke, it'd be one thing, but you're selling these guys for these massive transfer fees. The money's there. Brighton used the Star Lizard algorithm. Yeah, I'm familiar with all this. Evaluate them for attitude. The best player will be rejected with the attitude. Okay, so listen, I don't know where their evaluation comes down on Aymeric Laporte or on Mohamed Kudus, and I'm not privy to those analytics. So if they say the guy's a prick and he's not going to fit with the team, fine. Move on to somebody else. We're having a topical discussion about philosophy. I'm not saying they should go get this guy for this price. I think we're being a little too literal here. Brighton fans will never change the Brighton will never change the wage structure, and Brighton fans don't want them to. Fine, enjoy mid-table. That's fine. I don't get it, but that's fine. If the culture of being the best of the underdogs is all that you ever want, then enjoy it. Enjoy it. That's fine. The money's already there. I know. I don't know why you're screaming. That's what I said. The money's there. The money's there. Spend it. Spend it more. I know they've gone out and replaced these guys. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm saying spend more. Spend more. It's how you're going to get better. I'm sorry. That matters. You can have the best business model in the world, and that'll help you get to 6th place, and that'll help get you to the Europa League. But if you don't spend more, you're never going to be any better. That's the whole argument. Brighton fans, I'm going to leave you with this because I got to get to actual work today. Just don't be happy being the best of the underdogs. I think the club is primed for better, and getting to this point, getting to where you finished last year and getting a Europa League spot and having the young talent and having a great coach. God, you've got a great coach who somebody's going to steal soon. Somebody's going to steal De Zerbi in the next year or two. You've got a window of opportunity here to be better, to be even bigger. And I'm not saying go be a Big 6 club and spend hundreds of millions. I'm not saying the money was already there. You're making my point. My whole point is that there's money. They need to spend more of it, right? You're making my point. Thank you. The argument here is they've got to spend a little more to get to that next level. Not ridiculous amounts, not carelessly, right? Not playing career mode or not playing Football Manager, right? But they've got to spend a little more. And it can't always be on a developmental project. They need some now impact players if they're going to compete on 3 fronts this year. That's just a fact. They have lost talent over the past few years, and yes, the money's there because they're well run. The time is now to spend it, to spend more. And I just don't want to see fans like I'm seeing on Twitter, like I'm seeing here, that are just happy to be the best of the underdog clubs. They're going to be better than your poor analysis without changing it. Okay, that's fine. We'll see. Listen, I'm rooting for Brighton. I always am. I like how they do business. I love their manager. And I want to see the business model work. And it has worked. And you've done an amazing job. The club has done an amazing job to get where they are. And they deserve all the credit in the world. But with this system, and without changing any of the wage structures, this is probably as high as it goes. That's my analysis. You're welcome to disagree. But this is about as high as it goes for Brighton. And I would just hate to see them take a step back because they don't spend a little bit more. Again, a little bit is all I'm talking about here. Because they don't spend a little bit more, and because the fans are happy to be the best they can be without getting lumped into the big spenders. We don't want to become a plastic club. Right, that's what I keep hearing, right? God, it's just not that black and white. It's not that black and white. You can spend a little bit more without becoming what you so effectively call a plastic club, right? Listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying you go be Manchester City. I'm not saying that, right? I'm not saying you sell a stake in the club to Saudi investors or something like that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying reinvest a little bit more to reinforce this club. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand how any fan of any club could be mad about that. Right? I'm not saying do it carelessly. I'm not saying do it recklessly. I'm not saying go get players who are going to be clubhouse issues. I'm saying they need more help. They need more help. You lost a World Cup winning playmaker, and yes, you replaced him with a person, but it's a step down. And you're probably going to lose Caicedo, and the replacements will probably be a step down. So then where is the money going? Where's the money going? And infrastructure is great, and academy's great, and training's great, and your coach is fantastic. But at some point, you got to go get some impact players. That's my argument. And that doesn't make you a plastic club. Get over yourselves. I'm sorry. And I don't mean to attack Brighton fans, because most of you get it. Most of you are having cohesive conversations and arguments. But reinvesting and going and getting some $30 to $40 million players, right? And that would break your transfer fee record, by the way. You know, you're not going to get better than this. With this system, they're constantly improving, but you know better. No, I'm not saying I know better than them. I'm saying don't let your club be okay with this being the peak. That's what I'm saying. You know, ownership is doing a good job of reinvesting, but they're at their limit. They're happy to make a profit or at least break even. And most owners are okay breaking even because the values of clubs go up by so much that's where they really make their money. So, you know, eventually, you know, they'll sell for, you know, 5 times what they paid for, although at least Bloom was a fan of the club, so maybe he holds on to it for a while. But they're happy to break even, and if that means being 6th place instead of 3rd, then so be it. And I'm just afraid of that happening for you guys. I'm sorry, listen, I'm rooting for you guys to be better, so I don't get why I'm getting attacked. But yes, I understand you're owned by a billionaire fan. I'm speaking in hypotheticals. You know, and Caicedo may not be going anywhere this summer, but he's leaving at some point because he has openly said he wants to go elsewhere. I am with you that I don't think that should happen. I think he's being selfish, and I think Brighton would be a great place for him to grow and be a star. But he seems to want out. So, yes, I understand that you're owned by a billionaire fan. Yes, I understand. I think that's part of what makes it great. But you know, nobody has the money that the state-owned clubs have. It's a different level of money, even by billionaire standards. They're rich. So I've said what I need to say. I wanted to expand on this because it's a very complicated topic, and I love the Brighton fan base, and I love the passion. And every time I talk about Brighton, my notifications blow up, and usually they're very active. Yes, he has. It's been I don't know what we're arguing about now. But he has openly said he wanted to go to Arsenal in the winter, and he wants to go to Chelsea now, and he's said that a number of times. I'm not sure where your head is. But anyway, I love the Brighton fans. They're passionate. It's a great run club. It's fun to watch, and I'm rooting for you. I just would like to see a little more investment in the club. You know, follow me on Twitter. I'll send you the links. I would love to see a little more investment there because it could be great. It could be the best underdog, not rags to riches, but underdog story, playing with the big boys and beating them at their own game for less money. And I think it would be great to watch. And I hope that 6th place isn't the pinnacle. I hope it's not the best they ever do. And I certainly hope that they're not allowed to get away with that. Management isn't allowed to get away with that because the fans are so afraid of being, as you call, a plastic team, because there's just so much gray area in between being a low spending club and being Manchester City. Right? There's just eons of space in there in between. And so all I'm saying is, instead of being here, you know, get closer to here. That's all. Why that's getting such pushback is maybe I just don't understand your culture, but I'll tell you that it's ass backwards. So, thanks as always for following, for watching. Even when we disagree, I love the conversation. Conversation is why I have this channel. So I love talking about it. I love having the conversation. You probably already follow me, but if you don't, subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter. We'll keep it going on here. And we're going to try and do more of these live streams as I figure out the